Welcome to an overview of Child Care Resource and Referrals, Emergency Preparedness and Response Plan Template for Home Providers. Beginning on October 1, 2016, Iowa law requires child care providers to have a written emergency plan in place. Emergency plans must include procedures for evacuation and relocation, sheltering in place, lockdown, addressing the individual needs of children, including those with functional or access needs, communication and reunification with parents and other approved individuals, and continuity of operations. An emergency or disaster can happen at any time. Emergencies and disasters can range from something that happens in your child care home, such as a child injury or fire, to something that involves your neighborhood or community, such as flooding, high winds, or tornado damage. There are several goals of developing such a plan, but ultimately it is to help you be aware of and prepare for hazards, emergencies, and disasters, and to reduce the impact of said emergencies on your business, and most importantly, the children you care for. Providers who have experienced disasters are thankful that they took the time to develop a plan and found the plan useful in being better prepared when a disaster impacted their home. The Child Care Emergency Preparedness and Response Plan is a document that child care providers can use to help prepare for emergency events. This particular plan can be found on CCR&R's website under the Emergency Preparedness tab. You don't need to use this plan. However, if you choose to use this template, it would help you meet the requirements in Iowa law. There are a couple of formats of this document, so you can download and save it for your individual use. It's available in Word and Adobe. It is also available in Spanish. There is a template with guided questions in each section to help you develop your plan. The video displays the version of the template with those guided questions. You'll design this plan specifically to meet the needs of your individual program. The plan will be based on your location and assessment of potential hazards in your community. Include what is required for your program. A few suggestions to keep in mind as you develop the emergency plan for your program. Keep your plan simple so you can have any substitutes, assistants, or co-providers know the important steps when an emergency happens. Keep your plan in a place where it is easily accessible for reference. Train and practice your plan regularly so everyone knows what needs to be done. Your actions should be instinctive and decisive. Update your plan at least annually and make changes after conducting drills or after an actual event. Your local CCR&R child care consultant can help you develop the plan and identify resources in your area. Let's look at the first section. In an emergency, it is easy to forget basic information. Completing this section in your Child Care Emergency Preparedness and Response Plan ensures important information is easily accessible to everyone, including substitutes, assistants, co-providers, or emergency responders. Ensure all boxes are completed with your program's information and update as needed or as information changes. Be sure to change the date so everyone is aware the plan is up to date. Having all emergency contact numbers listed allows you to have information readily available. In a stressful situation, it is an easy reference to use. List all local emergency numbers, including the non-emergency numbers for police and fire. Remember to include the area code in your phone number. Community partners are necessary to list in your program plan. Partners can be businesses or other child care home providers or centers to call if you need quick assistance. Identifying an out-of-state contact person is necessary if local communications are not available, to ensure a base of communication for parents or emergency personnel. After completing basic and emergency contact information, the next step in developing your emergency plan is to identify emergencies and possible disasters that are most likely to happen in your child care home and in your community. Check all possible emergencies, disasters, or additional events likely to happen in your area. Some examples include a chemical spill, train derailment, flooding, or gas leak. The Risk and Hazard Assessment tool helps to identify possible emergencies, hazards, and threats to your program. An instructional video for this tool is on CCR&R's website under the Emergency Preparedness tab. Providers must have a plan in place ahead of time to ensure children are safely reunited with their families. When picking up a child, you must release the child to only authorized individuals. Your process may include photo identification before releasing the child. There is a child release form on CCR&R's website that provides documentation of who you release the child to. If there is sufficient warning and it is safe to do so, try to reunite children with their families before the emergency or disaster happens. In extreme disaster situations, you may not be able to reach the parents or an authorized emergency contact. If no one can be found to release the child to, and you are no longer able to provide care for extended hours, contact your local police department to determine next steps and follow up with the Department of Human Services when possible. There are more resources on CCR&R's website, such as the Child Release Form, Child Identification Form, Child Enrollment Information Form, and a parent letter with emergency information that may be helpful with this step. Videos on these forms are available on the CCR&R website. As you develop your emergency plan, keep in mind that the plan should be detailed enough to address all possible events, but not so complex that you, any substitutes, assistants, co-providers, or parents have a difficult time remembering the necessary steps when a disaster or emergency happens. When developing your program's evacuation procedures, use the questions in each box to guide you. Important considerations to include: name to face counting regularly, emergency medications, plans for pets and how your plans may need to change based on weather, for example, clearing pathways of snow. Additional resources that may be helpful are on CCR&R's website, including videos for evacuation drill permission forms, practice drill evaluation tool, practice drill recording form, site diagram for evacuations, relocation posting, and relocation shelter agreements. All providers must have a shelter in place and lockdown plan. If there is a weather-related emergency, chemical spill, or an intruder in the area, you need a plan of where and how you will stay safe in your childcare home. When developing your emergency procedures, use the questions in each box to guide you. Remember, the plan is specific to you. Consider if you need to remain in that space for an extended time, whether it's hours or even days. What is needed? During the derecho in August 2020, it was discovered that more flashlights were needed to provide light source for the extended amount of time that some childcare providers were without electricity. Check your supplies frequently to make sure they are sufficient so the food is not spoiled, batteries are fresh, and supplies meet the needs of the current children using that space. The supply list on CCR&R's website under the Emergency Preparedness tab is a helpful tool. As you may be the only adult in your childcare home, having a plan to safely evacuate infants, toddlers, and children with limited mobility is critical. Important considerations include using resources such as an evacuation crib, sled, or stroller, how to evacuate children with limited mobility, and how your plans may need to change based on the weather. In an emergency or disaster, time cannot be wasted gathering emergency supplies. Emergency supplies must be prepared and assembled ahead of time and be easily accessible. Consider the records and supplies you'll need for each child. Use the guided questions in the box to help develop your plan. The supply list on CCR&R's website under the Emergency Preparedness tab can be a helpful tool. Communication with children, parents, and emergency officials is important before, during, and after an emergency or disaster. Depending on the diversity of the children in your childcare home, you may also need to consider cultural differences and language barriers when developing your plan for communicating with parents. Based on your potential risk assessment identified in Section 3, complete this section to create plans for each hazard not already addressed in your emergency procedures. Consider hazards that may happen in your area, such as a train derailment, chemical spill, water contamination, flash flooding, power outage, nuclear contamination, and more. Refer to the Emergency Preparedness and Response Plan Guide for additional guidance, or contact your local CCR&R or child care nurse consultant to help identify and support planning for local specific hazards or other events. This section of the plan helps your childcare home to decide how do you protect your computer hardware and software. Some questions to consider include how you will access important documents if your computer is destroyed, and where you will be keeping backup records. Next steps in your plan should include how you will recover, what resources you need, and how you can continue to offer care to families safely. The damage assessment form found on CCR&R's website will help you prioritize repairs based on what you need to do to reopen your business. Providers are not required to complete a damage assessment form, but the information will help your families and the community better understand the impact of the disaster. If service can no longer be provided in your current location and you have an alternate location available, you will need to determine what steps you must complete before providing childcare at that alternative location. DHS regulatory staff and your CCR&R staff can help you with this process. You may need to wait for DHS and/or public health to tell you if and when it is safe to reopen. Make sure to let your DHS compliance worker and CCR&R consultant know of your current status. Trauma often follows disasters. The plan can help you prepare for the emotional trauma that children and families may experience. Childcare can be a source of stability for the children and families. Look at the resources available to children and families and know what your supports are. Consider the resource list on CCR&R's website under the Emergency Preparedness tab. Iowa law requires you to complete both fire and tornado drills monthly and document information about those drills. Depending on the risks you identified and the procedures in your emergency plan, there may be other types of drills to practice, such as evacuation, lockdown, etc. After conducting a drill, it is important to evaluate what worked well and what needs improvement, and then update your emergency plan as needed. The Emergency Practice Drill Evaluation tool is something to do just that. If you need to make updates to your emergency plan, remember to indicate the revision date on the plan and let parents and community partners know about the changes in advance. After practicing a monthly drill, it is a good time to check smoke detectors, carbon monoxide detectors, fire extinguishers, and evacuation equipment, and change batteries. The record of detector and fire extinguishers evacuation equipment checks is another tool you can use to document all of these things. Check your emergency supplies monthly and replenish as needed. If you're looking for the other forms and videos that were just mentioned on this recording, check out our main EP training page. Or, if you're ready to take a deeper, all-inclusive dive into emergency preparedness, check out CCR&R's Emergency Preparedness for Childcare Programs training. The links are up on your screen now. Thank you.